My sister announced her pregnancy at my engagement party, turning my special night into her personal showcase. I hid in the bathroom, heartbroken, until a friend showed me a text proving it was all planned. That's when I decided to plan a party of my own, a trap she'd never forget. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The champagne flute felt cool and steady in my hand, a perfect counterpoint to the bubbling warmth in my chest. Everything was exactly as I had envisioned it. As an event planner, my own engagement party was meant to be my masterpiece, a seamless blend of elegance and heartfelt joy. Soft jazz music drifted through the warmly lit restaurant loft, weaving through the happy chatter of our closest friends and family. Mark, my fiancé, had his arm wrapped securely around my waist, his thumb stroking my side in a gesture of quiet, constant affection. For the first time in a long time, everything felt perfect. My gaze drifted across the room, landing on my younger sister, Sophie. She was holding court near the appetizer table, her laughter just a little too loud, her gestures a little too grand. She was radiant, I had to admit, in a silk dress that clung to her frame. I smiled, a genuine, uncomplicated smile. Tonight was about love and family, and I was determined to let nothing spoil it. An hour later, my father, David, tapped his glass for a toast. Mark and I stood in the center of the room, our friends and family forming a happy circle around us. My father spoke of his pride, my mother, Carol, dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, and Mark's parents beamed. Then Mark spoke, his voice thick with an emotion that made my own eyes well up. He talked about the day we met, the moment he knew, and the future he couldn't wait to build with me. The entire room was wrapped in a golden haze of happiness. It was my moment, our moment. "I'd like to say something, too," Sophie's voice cut through the applause. She glided to the center of the circle, taking the metaphorical stage with the ease of a seasoned performer. I felt a familiar, tiny knot tighten in my stomach, but I pushed it down. This was my sister. She was happy for me. "To Gloria and Mark," she began, raising her glass. Her smile was dazzling. "We are also so thrilled for you. It's so wonderful to see my big sister finally find her person." The word "finally" was delivered with a slight, almost imperceptible emphasis that I was sure only I caught. "And speaking of new beginnings and building a family." She paused for dramatic effect, placing a perfectly manicured hand on her stomach. Her eyes scanned the room, ensuring she had everyone's undivided attention. Mark's hand tightened on mine. "Well," Sophie continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that carried through the suddenly silent room. "It looks like Mark is not just getting a wife, he's getting a niece or nephew, too. I'm pregnant." The announcement landed like a bomb. A wave of gasps and excited murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother shrieked with delight, rushing forward to hug Sophie. My father's face broke into a wide, proud grin. People turned to congratulate her, their focus instantly shifting from the newly engaged couple to the mother-to-be. Mark and I were suddenly background characters in our own story. The golden haze shattered, and all I could feel was a creeping, icy cold. Sophie stood in the center of it all, bathed in the spotlight she had so expertly redirected. She met my eyes for a fleeting second, and in her gaze, I saw not shared joy, but triumph. I don't remember what I said. I think I smiled, I think I hugged her, but my mind had gone numb, a roaring static filling my ears. I mumbled an excuse and slipped away, navigating the clusters of people now eagerly asking Sophie about her due date. I made it to the restroom, locking the door behind me and leaning my forehead against the cool wood. The knot in my stomach was now a raging fire. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. How could she? How could she do this to me, tonight of all nights? My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my best friend, Jenna. I ignored it. Another buzz, then another. Finally, I pulled it out, my hands trembling. Jenna's text wasn't words. It was a screenshot. A screenshot of a text exchanged between her and my sister from the week before. Jenna's text to Sophie read, "So excited for Gloria's party. She's worked so hard on it." And beneath it, Sophie's reply, the one that would change everything. Me too. I've been thinking, how can I really make her party memorable? I stared at the words on the screen, the font blurring through my tears. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a thoughtless, spontaneous act of overexcitement. It was a plan. A calculated, deliberate strike designed to hurt me. She hadn't just stolen my moment, she had plotted to do it. The betrayal was so much worse than the act itself. The ride home was silent. Mark drove, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. He kept glancing over at me, his expression a mixture of anger and concern. I just stared out the window, the city lights a meaningless smear of color. The screenshot burned in my mind. How can I really make her party memorable? The words echoed over and over, each repetition a fresh stab of pain. It wasn't just sibling rivalry anymore, this felt like malice. When we got back to our apartment, I collapsed onto the sofa, the beautiful dress I'd been so excited to wear now feeling like a costume from a play where I'd been cast as the fool. Mark knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. "I am so sorry, Gloria," he said, his voice low and furious. "I can't believe she did that. I can't believe your parents just went along with it." "They're excited," I whispered, my voice hollow. "They're going to be grandparents." "They should have been excited for us," he countered, his protective anger a small, warm shield against the cold that had settled deep in my bones. They should have told her it was inappropriate. They should have done something. He was right, of course. My parents, David and Carol, had always been conflict-averse, especially when it came to Sophie. For years, their family mantra had been keep the peace. This usually translated to placating Sophie's dramatic whims and encouraging me to be the bigger person, to let things go for the sake of harmony. But this time, their inaction felt like a profound betrayal in its own right. My phone rang the next morning. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a text popped up. "Sweetheart, please call me. We need to talk about last night. So much excitement." Excitement, that's what she called it. Not a hijacking, not a calculated act of cruelty. I showed the text to Mark, who just shook his head. "You don't have to talk to her until you're ready," he said firmly. But I knew I had to. Avoiding it would only allow their version of the story, a happy, spontaneous family announcement, to solidify into fact. I took a deep breath and dialed her number. "Gloria, I was so worried," my mother's cheerful voice chirped. "What a night, I'm still buzzing. A wedding and a baby, we are so blessed." "Mom," I said, my voice flat, "we need to talk about what Sophie did." The cheerfulness in her voice faltered, replaced by a weary sigh. "Oh, honey, don't be like that. She was just excited. She probably just got caught up in the moment. You know how she is." "She did it on purpose," I said, the words feeling heavy and sharp. "Now, Gloria, that's a terrible thing to say," she chided gently. "Your sister loves you. Why would you think she would intentionally try to ruin your party?" I wanted to scream about the text. I wanted to forward her the screenshot and demand an explanation, but I held back. Showing my hand now would be a mistake. Sophie would deny it, twist it, claim it was a joke. My parents would believe her, desperate to restore their comfortable peace. They would tell me I was overreacting, reading into things, and I would be left looking like the bitter, jealous sister. No, if I was going to address this, I had to be smarter. "It was our engagement party, Mom, our one night. She couldn't let me have it," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the tremor of rage inside me. "She just wanted to share her good news with the family while everyone was together," my mother reasoned, her voice taking on the familiar cadence of a peacemaker. "Try to see it from her perspective. Let's not let this create a problem. Just be the bigger person for me." There it was, be the bigger person. The phrase that had governed my entire life with Sophie. It meant letting her win, letting her have the last word, letting her take whatever she wanted without complaint. It meant swallowing my own hurt to manage her feelings. "Okay, Mom," I said, the words tasting like ash. "I have to go." I hung up before she could reply. Mark looked at me, his eyes full of sympathy. He didn't need to ask how it went, he already knew. I felt a profound sense of isolation. My own parents were not on my side. They were on the side of perceived harmony, and Sophie was the one who determined its presence or absence. For years, I had played their game. I had graciously stepped back from the spotlight at birthdays, graduations, and holidays, all to appease my sister's insatiable need for attention. I had done it because I was told it was the right thing to do, the mature thing to do. But as I sat there, replaying my mother's dismissive words, something inside me shifted. The hurt began to cool, hardening into something else. Resolve. They saw me as the accommodating one, the peacemaker. They saw me as the one who would always smooth things over. But they had all forgotten one crucial thing about me. My career as an event planner wasn't just a job, it was a reflection of my personality. I was meticulous. I was strategic. I plan everything. And for the first time in my life, I was going to use that skill for something other than a party. I was going to plan my response. Growing up, my life with Sophie felt like a constant, unspoken competition that I was the only one trying not to play. I was the responsible older sister, the straight-A student, the one who followed the rules. Sophie was the whirlwind, charming, spontaneous, and utterly captivating. Where I was steady, she was a spark. Our parents, David and Carol, reveled in her vibrant energy, often mistaking her dramatic flair for simple passion. They saw my quiet diligence as maturity, which meant I was expected to handle things, to understand, to forgive. I remembered my high school graduation party. I had just been named valedictorian, a goal I had worked tirelessly to achieve. In the middle of my grandfather's toast to me, Sophie, then a freshman, tearfully announced that her first-ever boyfriend had just broken up with her over the phone. The party came to a grinding halt. All attention shifted to consoling a heartbroken Sophie. My academic achievement was instantly forgotten, relegated to a backdrop for her teenage drama. Later, my mom pulled me aside and said, "Just let her have this, Gloria. Her heart is broken. Your grades will still be there tomorrow." Then there was the time I ran my first marathon. As I crossed the finish line, exhausted and exhilarated, I looked for my family. I found them a few hundred feet away, clustered around Sophie, who had fainted from sympathetic exhaustion and was being attended to by paramedics. It turned out she was just dehydrated from not drinking enough water, but the scene she created was worthy of a medical drama. My marathon medal felt like a cheap trinket as I watched my parents fawn over her. Her entire life was a performance, and she demanded a captive audience. When she decided to become a lifestyle blogger a few years ago, it was the perfect fit. Her social media was a curated gallery of flawless photos, inspirational quotes, and dramatic captions about her journey. She presented herself as an open book, a vulnerable soul navigating the world. But I knew the truth. Every post was calculated, every vulnerable admission a tool to garner sympathy and attention. Her profession wasn't creating a lifestyle, it was monetizing the spotlight. In the weeks leading up to the engagement party, her behavior had been particularly pointed. When Mark and I announced our engagement, her first question, after a perfunctory congratulations, was, "Wow, how are you going to afford a wedding? Aren't you still paying off your business loan?" It was a jab disguised as a question, designed to subtly undermine our joy. She would make little comments about Mark's job as an architect, calling it so stable and safe, with an inflection that made it sound like boring. She would contrast it with her own brave path as a creative entrepreneur, conveniently omitting the fact that our parents still paid her car insurance and phone bill. She had an uncanny ability to frame her dependency as artistic courage and my independence as mundane caution. The Sophie the world saw, the one on Instagram with thousands of followers who adored her authenticity, was a complete fabrication. The real Sophie was deeply insecure, driven by a jealousy so profound that she couldn't stand to see anyone else, especially me, have a moment of pure, unadulterated happiness that didn't revolve around her. She didn't just want to be in the spotlight. She needed it to exist, and she would snuff out any other light in the room to make sure hers burned the brightest. After the disastrous party, Mark and I tried to resume our lives. We went back to work, we met with wedding vendors, but the shadow of that night lingered. Friends would call and awkwardly offer their congratulations, for both the engagement and the pregnancy, unsure of the proper etiquette. The joy had been diluted, tainted. My own engagement felt like a shared event, the first chapter of my wedding story co-authored by my sister against my will. A week later, I saw Sophie's online pregnancy announcement. It was a professionally shot photo of her and her long-term boyfriend, Tom, on a beach at sunset. She was holding a letterboard that read, "The best is yet to come." In the caption, she wrote a long, flowing paragraph about the magic of life and new beginnings. Tucked into the middle was a line that made my blood run cold. We were so excited, we just couldn't keep the secret any longer and ended up spilling the beans at my sister's engagement party last week. It was such a magical night filled with so much family love. She was rewriting history. She was casting her selfish act as a beautiful, spontaneous overflow of joy, cleverly looping my engagement into her narrative, making it seem like a joint celebration. Hundreds of comments poured in, congratulating her, praising her for sharing her joy. No one knew the truth. No one saw the calculation. They only saw the performance, and they were giving her a standing ovation. That was the moment my resolve crystallized into a concrete plan. She had used a public forum to control the story. Fine, I would do the same, but I wouldn't use a curated photo and a misleading caption. I would use the truth. And I would deliver it at an event so perfectly planned, so beautifully executed, that no one would ever question what really happened. She wanted to make my party memorable. I was going to throw her a party she would never, ever forget. The idea came to me on a Tuesday morning while I was storyboarding a color palette for a client's wedding. I was staring at swatches of blush, cream, and gold, and the thought struck me with such clarity that I nearly dropped my coffee. A baby shower. I would throw Sophie a baby shower. It was the perfect Trojan horse. On the surface, it would be the ultimate act of forgiveness, the grand gesture of a loving, bigger person. It would disarm everyone, my parents, our relatives, even Sophie herself. They would see it as me finally letting go of my grudge, embracing my sister's happiness, and restoring peace to the family. They would praise my maturity and generosity. They wouldn't suspect a thing. When I told Mark my plan that evening, he was skeptical. A party for her, Gloria, after what she did, why would you reward her? It's not a reward, I explained, my voice low and steady. I walked over to my desk and pulled out a fresh notebook, the kind I used for new clients. I wrote Project Nightingale at the top of the first page. It's a venue. It's a stage. She chose my stage to play her scene, so I'm going to build her one from scratch. He watched me, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding. A clever trap, he murmured, a slow smile spreading across his face. I like it. What's the plan? For the next few weeks, I threw myself into the project with the full force of my professional skill. The first step was the investigation. I didn't need a private investigator. I had something far more powerful, 2 decades of memories and a sister who had never been good at covering her digital tracks. I started by methodically going through old family photo albums, yearbooks, and home videos. I wasn't just looking for happy memories, I was looking for a pattern. And it was there, clearer than I had ever allowed myself to see. In nearly every significant photo of me, Sophie was there, right beside me, doing something to draw the eye. At my 8th grade graduation, she had a brightly colored cast on her arm from a fall the day before. At my sweet 16, she wore a white dress that was suspiciously similar to a wedding gown. Photo after photo showed the same dynamic, my milestone, her spectacle. Next, I turned to the digital world. I scrolled back years on her social media, cross-referencing her posts with my own timeline of events. It was a masterclass in narrative manipulation. The weekend I got my first big promotion at work, she posted a lengthy, vague story about a personal setback that garnered hundreds of sympathetic comments. The day Mark and I adopted our dog, she posted about a friend's pet that had tragically passed away, subtly tainting the happy occasion with sadness. This wasn't just attention-seeking. It was a strategic campaign to ensure she was always the main character, even in stories that weren't about her. I took screenshots, saved links, and documented dates, compiling everything into a meticulous timeline. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building around her. The most crucial part of my plan involved Jenna. I called her and explained what I was doing. She was horrified by Sophie's text and immediately on board. "She can't keep getting away with this, Gloria," Jenna said, her voice fierce with loyalty. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to talk to her," I said. "I'm going to announce that I'm throwing her the shower. Our parents will be thrilled and they'll pressure her to accept. When you talk to her, I need you to act a little concerned, like you're on her side. Ask her if she thinks it's a good idea, if she thinks I'm really over what happened." Jenna understood immediately. She was going to be my inside source, gauging Sophie's reaction and confirming my suspicions about her ego. The following Sunday, at our parents' house for dinner, I made my announcement. "I've been thinking a lot," I began, looking directly at Sophie. "And I realized that all the drama from the engagement party overshadowed your wonderful news. I was so wrapped up in my own stuff that I didn't celebrate you properly. So, I'd like to throw you a baby shower." The effect was instantaneous. "Oh's," my mother burst into happy tears. "Oh, Gloria, that is the most wonderful, mature thing I have ever heard," she gushed, beaming at me. My father nodded, his expression filled with relief. "That's my girl, always the bigger person." Sophie was stunned into silence, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. She knew me better than they did. This level of magnanimity was completely out of character for our relationship, but with our parents praising me so effusively, she was cornered. To refuse would make her look ungrateful and petty. "Wow, Gloria," she said, forcing a bright smile. I don't know what to say. Are you sure?" "Of course," I said, my own smile feeling practiced and serene. "You're my sister. This is a huge moment. It deserves a proper celebration. My treat." The trap was set. The bait had been taken. Over the next few days, Jenna played her part perfectly, reporting back to me. Sophie had gloated to her, convinced that my gesture was a sign of her victory. "She totally thinks she won," Jenna told me over the phone. She said, and I quote, "I guess she finally realized she was being childish about the party. It's better this way. Now everyone can focus on what's really important, the baby." Hearing those words didn't hurt. They were simply confirmation. Sophie's arrogance was my greatest asset. She would walk into the beautiful party I was planning for her, expecting to be the star of the show. And she would be, just not in the way she imagined. With Sophie's acceptance secured, I moved into the execution phase of my plan. I sent out beautifully designed invitations for a garden party-themed baby shower to be held at a chic local botanical garden conservatory. I booked the best caterer in town, designed a stunning floral arrangement scheme, and even hired a harpist. To anyone looking in, I was planning the event of the season, a lavish and heartfelt gift for my beloved sister. Every detail was a piece of the set, designed to create an atmosphere of serene celebration that would make the eventual disruption all the more shocking. My parents were ecstatic, calling me every few days to rave about my generosity. "Everyone is so impressed, Gloria," my mother would say. "Your Aunt Carol said she always knew you had a good heart." They were so relieved that their family was back in a state of perceived harmony that they were completely blind to the mechanics clicking into place just beneath the surface. About 2 weeks before the event, I knew I needed to have a direct conversation with Sophie. It was a strategic move, designed to both manage her suspicions and gather the last piece of my narrative. I called her under the guise of finalizing the guest list. "Hey, Soph," I said, keeping my tone light and breezy. "Just wanted to run the final list of names by you. I want to make sure I haven't missed anyone important." "Oh, right," she said, a little distracted. I could hear the faint tapping of a keyboard in the background. "Just send it over. I'm sure it's fine." "Great. And hey, I just wanted to say, I'm really glad we're doing this," I said, injecting a note of sincerity into my voice. "I'm sorry if I seemed upset after the engagement party. It was just a lot to take in at once." This was the bait. I was offering her a version of the story she could accept, one where I was the one who had overreacted. Her response was immediate. The keyboard tapping stopped. "It's okay, Gloria," she said, her voice dripping with condescension disguised as grace. "I get it. You had your vision for the night. But some moments are just too big to keep to yourself, you know? The universe had its own plan." The universe? She was attributing her selfish, premeditated act to fate. It was so perfectly, infuriatingly on brand for her. "I suppose so," I said, letting out a small, counterfeit sigh. "Well, I'm determined to make this baby shower absolutely perfect for you. I want it to be a truly memorable day." I let the word hang in the air between us. Memorable, the same word from her text to Jenna. There was a half-second of dead silence on the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head as she processed what I'd said. Had I heard something? Did I know? The arrogance that Jenna had described was warring with a flicker of paranoia. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was a fraction tighter. "Well, that's sweet of you, Gloria. Just don't go too crazy. It's a baby shower, not a royal wedding." It was a poorly executed threat, a weak attempt to re-establish control by diminishing my efforts. She was warning me not to outdo her, not to make the party too good, lest I steal back some of the spotlight she now considered rightfully hers. To me, it was a clear sign of her guilt. An innocent person wouldn't have reacted to that word. An innocent person would have just said, "Thank you." "Don't worry," I replied, my voice as smooth as silk. "I'll make sure the focus is entirely on you and the baby." "Why?" "Oh, deserve it." I hung up the phone, a cold sense of certainty washing over me. Any lingering doubts I had about the severity of my plan vanished. She felt no remorse. She believed she was entitled to my moments, my joy, my life. She saw my kindness as weakness and my forgiveness as surrender. The confrontation, as subtle as it was, had solidified my resolve. I spent the next 2 weeks in a state of intense, focused activity. I finalized the catering, confirmed the vendors, and assembled the gift bags. But my most important work was done in the evenings, at my home computer. I created a simple, elegant slideshow. It began with photos of us as children, happy, smiling, the picture of sisterly affection. It moved through our teenage years, then into adulthood, a carefully curated collection of memories. But woven into this nostalgic tapestry were the screenshots, the timelines, the evidence of her quiet, consistent campaign of sabotage. The narrative would build slowly, almost imperceptibly, from a sweet tribute into an undeniable indictment. The final slide was a blank white screen. It was where the screenshot of her text to Jenna would appear, projected for everyone to see. I practiced the speech that would accompany the presentation, timing it to the second. My tone had to be perfect, calm, factual, and devoid of anger. I wasn't a hysterical victim. I was a narrator simply presenting the unvarnished truth. Mark sat and listened to me rehearse, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" he asked one night as I closed my laptop. I looked at him, the man I was going to marry, the man whose celebration she had so casually desecrated. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life," I said. "She wanted a memorable party. I'm going to give her one." The week of the baby shower, Sophie's smugness reached an all-time high. She began posting a countdown on her social media, sharing details of the upcoming event as if she had planned it herself. She posted a photo of the invitation I had designed with the caption, "So blessed that my big sis is throwing me the most gorgeous shower, family over everything." Read, the hypocrisy was breathtaking. Her followers showered her with praise, lauding our beautiful sisterly bond. Each comment felt like another twist of the knife, another layer of public deception I was preparing to peel away. My parents, too, were swept up in the performance. My mother called me almost daily to discuss her outfit or to suggest a new party game she'd seen online. "This is just what our family needed, Gloria," she said during one call. "A fresh start. I'm so proud of you for making this happen." I would murmur my agreement, a silent countdown ticking away in my own mind. They were all so blissfully unaware, happily walking toward the cliff I had so carefully landscaped. The stakes felt incredibly high. My plan was audacious, and the potential for it to backfire was enormous. I could be branded as cruel and vindictive, the crazy sister who ruined a baby's shower out of jealousy. For this to work, my execution had to be flawless. The case I was building had to be airtight, presented not as an attack, but as a reluctant, necessary revelation. My final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. I was speaking with our cousin, Sarah, who lived out of state and was flying in for the shower. We were catching up when she said, "You know, I was talking to Sophie last month, and something she said was so odd." My pulse quickened. What did she say? "Well, she was telling me you and Mark had gotten engaged," Sarah explained. And I said something like, "Oh, that's wonderful. Gloria deserves all the happiness." And Sophie got quiet for a second and then said, "She always gets everything first. It's only fair that some of us get to have our own big news, too." It felt so competitive. I didn't know what to say. It was another perfect puzzle piece. Sophie saw life not as a journey, but as a race she was determined not to lose. Her pregnancy wasn't just happy news. In her mind, it was a strategic move, a way to level the playing field with my engagement. I asked Sarah if she'd be willing to let me share that story. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed, saying she was tired of the family walking on eggshells around Sophie. The day before the party, I did a final walkthrough of the conservatory. The tables were being set, draped in pale yellow linens. The florist was arranging cascades of white roses and baby's breath. The space for the projector screen was discreetly set up behind the area where the gift table would be. Everything was perfect. It was a beautiful, serene stage for a reckoning. That night, I felt a tremor of doubt. Was this the right way? Was there a less destructive path? I pulled out my phone and looked at the screenshot from Jenna one last time. How can I really make her party memorable? The calculated cruelty those words extinguished my hesitation. She had set the rules of this game. I was simply playing it to its conclusion. Mark found me sitting in the dark, staring at the screen. He sat beside me and took my hand. Second thoughts. "A little," I admitted. "This is going to change everything, for the whole family." "Maybe that's a good thing," he said softly. "Maybe some things need to change. What Sophie did wasn't just about stealing a moment, Gloria. It was about power. She was showing you that she could take anything she wanted. What you're doing tomorrow, it's not just about getting even. It's about taking that power back." He was right. This wasn't just revenge. It was a boundary. A line drawn in the sand, not with anger, but with irrefutable facts. I was not destroying our family. I was trying to save it from the toxic dynamic that had been slowly poisoning it for years. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. I got dressed, not in a power suit, but in a simple, elegant floral dress. I wanted to look like a host, not a prosecutor. As I drove to the venue, I didn't feel angry or nervous. I felt clear. The guests began to arrive, marveling at the beautiful setup. My parents hugged me tightly, their faces beaming with pride. "You've outdone yourself, sweetheart," my dad said. And then Sophie made her entrance. She was glowing, dressed in a flowing white dress, her hand resting permanently on her small baby bump. She surveyed the scene, a proprietary smile on her face. She looked like a queen arriving at a celebration in her honor. She floated from guest to guest, accepting their congratulations and compliments on her beautiful party. She was the star, and she was loving every second of it. She came over to me, her smile bright and blinding. "Gloria, this is incredible," she said, her voice laced with a possessive satisfaction. "I knew you could pull off something nice, but this is beyond." "I'm so glad you like it," I said, my voice even. "I wanted it to be a day you'd never forget." Her eyes flashed for a second, that familiar flicker of suspicion, but it was quickly replaced by her triumphant smile. "Oh, don't worry," she said, patting her stomach. "I won't." The trap was set. The guest of honor had arrived. The show was about to begin. The baby shower unfolded with a practiced, seamless elegance. The harpist played softly in the background as guests mingled, sipping pastel-colored mocktails and nibbling on delicate tea sandwiches. Sophie was in her element, holding court on a large wicker throne we had decorated with flowers, regaling her friends with stories about her pregnancy cravings and morning sickness. She opened presents with performative gasps of delight, piling the tiny onesies and stuffed animals around her like trophies. My parents watched her, their faces alight with pure, uncomplicated joy. To them, this was the picture of a perfect family. After an hour, I subtly signaled the caterer, and a waiter dimmed the lights slightly. I walked to the front of the room, standing next to the discreetly placed projector screen, which was still blank. I tapped a glass with a spoon, the light chiming sound cutting through the gentle chatter. "If I could have everyone's attention for a moment," I said, my voice calm and clear. A warm, expectant hush fell over the room. Sophie beamed at me from her throne, anticipating a gushing tribute. "First, I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate my sister, Sophie, and this incredible new chapter in her life," I began, smiling warmly. "Becoming a mother is a profound journey, and Sophie, I know you will be an unforgettable one." I let that word choice settle for a moment before continuing. A sisterly bond is a special thing. It's a shared history, a lifetime of memories. And as I was thinking about what to say today, I found myself looking back at our memories together. On cue, the projector flickered to life. The first image appeared on the screen, a faded photograph of two little girls with matching pigtails, me looking seriously at the camera, Sophie laughing beside me. A collective awe went through the crowd. "From the very beginning, Sophie has had a gift for making life more exciting," I said, my tone affectionate. The slide changed to a photo from my 8th grade graduation. I was in my cap and gown, holding a diploma, but right next to me, Sophie was dramatically displaying her brightly colored cast, a pout on her face. A few people chuckled, remembering the story. The slideshow continued. A photo from my Sweet 16 with Sophie in her shockingly white dress. A picture from the finish line of my marathon where Sophie could be seen in the background, being fanned by our mother. I wasn't editorializing, just presenting the images, but a few people were starting to shift uncomfortably. My parents' smiles had become a little more fixed, a little more strained. "Sophie has always known how to make a mom. And her own," I continued, my voice still light. "She has this incredible ability to make sure every occasion is as memorable as possible. It's a real talent." The slideshow moved forward, showing screenshots of her social media posts, timed perfectly next to my life events, her personal setback next to my promotion, her post about the sad pet story next to the photo of me bringing my new puppy home. The atmosphere in the room was changing. The warm, happy buzz had evaporated, replaced by a tense, confused silence. Sophie's smile had vanished. Her face was pale, her eyes darting from the screen to me, a dawning horror in her expression. "Recently," I said, my voice dropping slightly, "I had my own memorable moment, my engagement party." A beautiful photo of Mark and me appeared on screen, taken just moments before Sophie's announcement. It was a wonderful night, and Sophie, of course, wanted to do something to make it truly special, to make it memorable. My eyes met hers across the room. She knew what was coming. She opened her mouth to speak, to stop me, but no sound came out. "In fact," I said, clicking the remote one last time. She was so focused on this, she even asked for advice. The final image filled the screen. It was the screenshot from Jenna. Stark, undeniable. The white text bubbles on the blue background were crystal clear for everyone to read. "Jenna, so excited for Gloria's party. She's worked so hard on it." "Sophie, me too. I've been thinking, how can I really make her party memorable?" A collective gasp went through the room. It was sharp, audible, and universal. My mother made a small, wounded sound. My father just stared, his face ashen. All eyes were now on Sophie, not with adoration, but with shocked disbelief. The beautiful set I had built for her had become a courtroom, and I had just presented the final, damning piece of evidence. Sophie shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the stone floor. "This is ridiculous," she stammered, her voice high and shrill. "She's twisting things, it was a joke. Gloria is just jealous, she's always been jealous of me. But her defense was weak, and her panic was evident. Her boyfriend, Tom, who had been sitting beside her, looked at the screen and then back at her, his expression utterly bewildered. "Sophie, what is that?" he asked quietly. "It's nothing, it's a misunderstanding," she insisted, her eyes wild. "Is it?" I asked, my voice still quiet, but now it carried the weight of absolute authority. I looked around the room, at our family, at her friends. Or is it a pattern? Is it a pattern of needing to be the center of every moment, even if it means hurting the people who love you? No one spoke. The truth of my words hung in the air, heavy and irrefutable, supported by the 20 years of evidence I had just laid bare. The public humiliation was absolute. Sophie stood there, exposed and alone, stripped of her curated narrative. Then Tom stood up. He didn't look at me. He looked at Sophie, and for the first time, he seemed to be seeing her clearly. He shook his head slowly, a look of profound disappointment on his face. He turned and walked out of the conservatory without a single word. That was the moment Sophie finally broke. A raw, broken sob escaped her lips. She collapsed back into her chair, covering her face with her hands, the queen dethroned in her own court. The party was over. The silence that followed Tom's departure was thick and suffocating. Guests began to quietly gather their things, murmuring excuses as they made their way to the exit, their eyes avoiding Sophie, who was still weeping in her wicker throne. It wasn't the chaotic, screaming confrontation I had braced for. It was something far more devastating, a quiet, collective judgment. My parents were the last to move. My mother, Carol, looked at me, her face a mask of confusion and hurt. "Gloria, how could you do this?" she whispered, as if I were the one who had committed the crime. But my father, David, stepped forward. He looked from the screen, where the text message still glowed, to his weeping younger daughter, and then finally to me. For the first time, the veil of denial seemed to have lifted from his eyes. He looked tired and old and deeply sad. "She's right, Carol," he said, his voice raspy. "We let this happen. We let it go on for years." He walked over to me, placed a hand on my arm, and said, "I'm sorry, Gloria. We should have listened to you." It wasn't a full absolution, but it was a start. A crack in the foundation of our family's dysfunction. Mark came to my side, wrapping a protective arm around me as my parents went to deal with the sobbing Sophie. We left them there, amidst the beautiful ruins of the party I had so meticulously planned. The aftermath was messy. Sophie and Tom broke up. He told her he needed space, that he couldn't bring a child into a relationship built on what he now saw as a foundation of deceit. Sophie moved back in with our parents, who insisted the whole family begin therapy. The first few sessions were brutal. Sophie alternated between defensive rage and tearful victimhood. She accused me of being cruel, of orchestrating her humiliation out of spite. My mother tried to play peacemaker, urging us to find a middle ground. But this time, I didn't back down. With the therapist as a neutral mediator, I calmly laid out my side. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stated the facts, explaining how her lifelong pattern of behavior had made me feel invisible and unvalued. My father, to his credit, backed me up. He admitted his and my mother's role in enabling Sophie, acknowledging that their desire for peace had come at my expense. The turning point came in our fourth session. Sophie had spent the entire hour deflecting, but the therapist gently but firmly kept bringing her back to the core issue, the text message. "Why did you send it, Sophie?" she asked. "What were you hoping to accomplish?" Sophie was silent for a long time. Then, in a small, broken voice I hadn't heard since she was a little girl, she finally told the truth. "I was jealous," she whispered, not looking at anyone. Gloria had Mark, a career she built herself, this perfect life she planned, and I had my online followers. When she got engaged, it just felt like she had one again. I wanted, just for one night, to feel more important than her. It was the first truly honest thing she had said in years. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation. It was the crack through which some light could finally enter. Rebuilding has been a slow and painful process. It has involved establishing firm boundaries. I love my sister, but I no longer make myself small to accommodate her ego. Our parents are learning to treat us as two distinct adults, not as a drama to be managed. A few months ago, Sophie called me. She had been seeing her own therapist and was working hard on herself. She formally apologized without justifications or blame. She said she was scared about being a single mom, but determined to be a good one. I listened, and for the first time, I believed her. I offered my support, not as the bigger person, but as a sister. Mark and I were finally married last month. It was a small, intimate ceremony, exactly what we wanted. Sophie was there. She sat quietly in the back, and when she congratulated us afterward, her eyes were filled with a genuine, uncomplicated happiness for me. It felt like a true new beginning. My professional life has also thrived. I used the Project Nightingale plan as a case study in a business proposal about strategic event management, omitting the personal details, of course. It landed me the biggest client of my career. In a way, Sophie's betrayal and my response to it forced me to reclaim my own power, not just in my family, but in my work as well. The trap I set for her ultimately ended up freeing me. I found peace not in revenge, but in the quiet, unshakable power of the truth.